Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna Church. Hi, guys. I'm Pastor Dave Saines, Senior Shepherd here at Living Manna. Hopefully, you guys are having a good evening, a good day. It's Wednesday evening. You know what time that means. It's time for Bible study. So make sure you got your Bibles, grab some pens, markers, and the notes. They're available, of course. You can go online. You can download them. You can watch them as they're up on the screen here. Get the information and get ready to get some study in. If this is the first time you're hanging out with us, or if you've been hanging out with us for a while, but you're not subscribed yet, please, you can hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell so you're notified each time we go live. If you enjoy the content, if you want to share it out with somebody, we would appreciate that. But certainly just take a moment right now and give us a thumbs up if you would. If you enjoy the message, past messages, this one, give us a thumbs up. It helps us with the algorithm and helps it get out to more people that are like-minded. Normal schedule this week, guys. We've got, of course, tonight, which is our Wednesday night Bible study. We've been doing morning mannas each and every day, early in the morning, around 7:30 in the morning. The manna is up, and they are definitely related. If you haven't been able to tell yet, they are related to our upcoming message about the fruit of the Spirit. We've been going over each one during our morning devotions, so stay tuned tomorrow morning on Thursday for our next devotion. And, of course, this upcoming Friday, a conversation between Brother Max and I on hidden manna. Got some neat stuff to share with you guys. And of course, obviously, our weekend message. So just normal schedule as we always do. In the meantime, if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's open up with a word of prayer and jump right into this thing. Abba, we love you. We ask for eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Amen. All right. So tonight, let me put this up so you guys can see it. Do a little side by side there. Tonight's message is called The Angel of Light. The Angel of Light. Now, you guys should recognize this verse, or at least where this comes from. Sort of a catchy title, but an important one. An important one we've been discussing. We're inching our way towards the calendar, towards all that kind of stuff. But more than just, to do the calendar, I want to sort of explain the story. And it's also where we've been touching a lot on Revelation. We're going to get more and more into it as we go through this thing. In fact, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Revelation as well. You'll see how it fits in with this entire story. But that's just it. We need to know the story. It's one thing to just give information and say, okay, this is what we're supposed to do, or this is what we're not supposed to do, or this is what it is, or this is what it isn't. For me, I need to know why. Why is it that way? What is the story? What's the reason behind it? And I think that's a good thing. I think we should have that sort of curiosity, not just to accept something because it sounds like facts, but to understand why, how it fits the story, how it fits the entire story of the Bible. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a case here week after week for what this story is about. And especially today, we're going to get into a little bit of detail as to what the enemy is doing. And we'll show you why he's doing it as we go through. So with that said, guys, Angel of Light. Here's the verse, or our opening verse for tonight. It comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verses 13 through 15. Of course, we're reading out of the Scriptures version, and it says the following. For such are false emissaries, deceptive workers, masquerading as emissaries of Messiah. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as a messenger, meaning angel of light, i.e., our title today, Angel of Light. It is not surprising, then, if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Okay, so we've been talking about the serpent, we've been talking about his plan, we've been talking about the war that's kind of going on, the deception that's going on. And certainly, this verse out of Corinthians, this is Saul, and also you get some of this. We'll look at John in 1 John in just a second. But here Saul's talking about false emissaries, false apostles, false sent ones, people that have gone out that were religious, no doubt religious, probably right out of Judaism, no doubt religious, but they were not disciples of Messiah. They were deceptive. They were messengers masquerading. They were emissaries masquerading as messengers. And of course, he says, well, no wonder. I mean, if that's what Satan's going to do, because a lot of times, we think about the enemy, we think about the devil, Satan, the serpent, the dragon. We think of this dark looking, horrible looking, monster kind of movie, type thing, the cross of Christ compels you, that kind of stuff. And that's a Hollywood depiction of him, I guess, or maybe a medieval depiction. But the scripture tells us that, he appears as an angel of light. So what does that mean? Well, it's not the dark, deep, exorcism stuff that we should really be concerned with. The real deception that comes from the enemy is stuff that sounds religious, is stuff that looks like light, because he comes, it tells us, as an angel of light. He looks like the things that the enemy does that are the most deceptive are things that have some truth to it, but then they're twisted and they're turned and they're put on their head and there's propaganda to it and the truth is really removed and we fall for it. And what Saul is saying here is, that's how the enemy is. That's how he comes. He appears. He appeared to the people in the garden. He was obviously something beautiful, something majestic, something with glory. And the Nakash, anyway, that represented him, and they fell for it, and so do we, and a lot of us have fallen for it. Again, we're talking about religion, and Saul tells us if that's how the serpent can appear, if that's how he presents himself, his emissaries do the same thing. That is, the people that serve him, the people that speak for him, like the serpent in the garden. They also appear as angels of light. Actually, the word that he uses here are servants masquerading as servants of righteousness. So I just want to use this verse as sort of a foundation as we go forward, that this idea of the enemy coming is not in this dark, dastardly, demonic thing the way we would think of demonic things, but instead with what looks like the truth. And we're going to get to that in just a second. So here it is, also as servants of righteousness. Now, here's just an example. We've kind of gone over this. We're just sort of building a little bit of a foundation. But here is another sent one. This is John. And here he is talking about the same thing. So this is not something that we are dealing with in our day only. This is something that was happening right there at the time of Messiah. And we're going to find out this was something that was happening way before Messiah came on the scene. We've been talking about the parables, how the parables are prophecies, but they're also historical documents. They're telling us about what did happen. They're telling us about what was happening with Messiah in that day. And he's prophesying to us the things that are coming. We're going to get into one of the parables in just a second. So here's 1 John chapter 2 and verse 18, just to sort of solidify our foundational verse there. Here's John saying, "Little children, it is the last hour." Now, guys, this was 2,000 years ago that he writes this, right? So the last hour has been going on for a little while. "It is the last hour. And as you have heard that the anti," and the anti there, in English it means to be against, but it really means to be in place of, someone who puts themselves in place of. "You've heard that the anti-Messiah is coming," or another Messiah. "Even now, many anti-Messiahs have come. This is how we know it is the last hour." And what are these anti-Messiahs? I'm just adding from what Saul said and putting it in here so we can sort of put the picture together. They, the anti-Messiahs, are masquerading servants. Masquerading servants, as Saul says, of righteousness. Just like the angel of light comes as an angel of light, or the devil comes as an angel of light. The masquerading servants went out from us. Think about that for a second. They were part of Judaism. They were part of faith. They were part of belief. These anti-Messiahs he's talking about, these servants of the dragon. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have stayed with us. But in order that it might be made manifest that none of them were of us, but what they were of was the angel of light. So I've just used these verses just to sort of give us a foundational thought here that what the enemy has been doing, he's been doing for a long time. And he doesn't just do by himself, he uses emissaries to do it. We call them masquerading servants in these particular verses, angels of light. Servants of the devil, the master refers to them. Here's some familiar verses. Again, we've gone over these before, but I'm just using them so that we can just make some connections before we jump into what I really want to talk about for tonight. So here's John chapter 8, verse 44. Just again, bring home this point about the servants of the masquerading servants. Here's John chapter 8, verse 44. This was going on in Messiah's day too. He tells the very religious these. So we're not talking about non-religious people. We're talking about religion here. Of course, today we're talking about quite a few different religions, but in this particular sense, in the context of these verses, we're talking about Judaism. He says, you are of your father, meaning the Pharisees, the priests, the scribes, the devil, or the angel of light. And the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and has not stood in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks the lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And you can check out some of the previous studies we've done on this. That's a verse you guys should at this point almost memorize by now. We've talked about it so many times. But check out some of the other studies where we put this in context to see how the master builds this particular point. Anyway, here's some more that the master says about these masquerading servants, or servants of servants of the dragon, or really the angel of light. Matthew chapter 23:13, again, speaking of the Pharisees, the scribes, religion. We got to get this through our heads. He's talking about the religious. And he says, but woe to you, you who serve as masquerade as servants of righteousness. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut up the kingdom of heaven before men. For you do not go in, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. So just from that verse alone, what does a masquerading servant of the enemy of righteousness do? Not only do they not enter into the kingdom, but they stop other people from entering into the kingdom, bringing them down. Of course, you can read the rest of Matthew 23, and Master goes through all the different woes and really defines for us sort of what servants of unrighteousness, or people that look like they're servants of righteousness or masquerading as it, what they really do and what they're really like. I leave that to you. You guys can go check that out. That's Matthew chapter 23. Just read through the whole chapter. It's really, really amazing. Okay, so all right, so that's out of the way. I don't think this is something that is foreign to us. We've talked about this before. So let's get into this. Here's where we really want to go. Now, we've been talking about the parables on our Saturday services, and we're really still into the first parable. That is the parable of the sower and the seed. Not this week, probably next week, we're going to get more into the wheat and the tares, but I want to talk about the wheat and the tares a little bit tonight as well. So you guys that are watching tonight, you're going to get a little bit of a preview. You have a little bit more information. So by the time we do get to this message, you guys will be that much ahead of everybody else. So the wheat and the tares. What's the basic parable about? Now, I don't want to read the whole thing. Again, we're going to talk more about this on our Saturday services. But the parable of the wheat and the tares is basically this: that the Son of Man goes out and he sows seed, good seed, into the field. And an enemy comes at night and sows bad seed, or really weeds. I think in the scriptures version it uses the word darnel, but we would just say weeds. So the servant, the Son of Man, he sows wheat. That's the good seed. That's the plant that should be growing, wheat. But tares are also growing, or weeds are also growing, that look, when we get into this, you can see I'm going to show you some pictures. They look a lot like wheat. As a matter of fact, it's kind of hard to tell as they're growing. And the servants of the Son of Man ask him, listen, do you want us to go out and pluck up all the weeds? And of course, the master in the parable says, no, don't do that yet, because if you do that, you might just pluck up some of the good wheat with it. Instead, let both grow together until the harvest. So you've got good seed, wheat, and you've got bad seed, tares or weeds or darnel, whichever word you'd like to use. They're growing together. Here's chapter 13, verse 37. And it says, so here's the master thankfully, just like the parable of the sower and the seed, the master takes the time to define this parable for the disciples. Now, there's a lot more to it that we just don't have time to get into tonight, but we're going to touch on it a little bit. So verse 37, here's what the master says about it. And he answering said to them, He who is sowing the good seed is the son of Adam, meaning himself. And the field is the world. And the good seed, or I put the PDP in there so we start to make some connections here because we're talking about wheat. The good seed, the wheat, these are the sons of the kingdom. But the darnel, the bad seed, the tares, the weeds, are the sons of the wicked one. Now, let's make a connection here. What are the sons of the wicked one also called, based on some of the verses we just looked at? Well, they are those that are masquerading as sons of righteousness. We're talking about religion here that looks kind of like wheat, but upon closer inspection, it's not. And yet, according to this parable, the thing that the master is telling us, they grow up together. Verse 39, and he tells us, and the enemy, or the angel of light, who sowed them is the devil, or the dragon, or as we already said, the angel of light, i.e., the one in charge, empowering religion. So he's talking about two things here, wheat and tares. And the problem is they grow together. And he doesn't want them separated. Now I want you to do something with me just for a second. We're going to play a little role game here, right? Because sometimes ever hear the saying, until you've walked a mile in your neighbor's shoes, or until you've walked a mile in your friend's moccasins, you don't know what their story really is. I'm probably misquoting the whole thing, but you get the idea. Sometimes you have to put yourself in the place of someone else to understand their perspective. All right. So I want to ask you, if this is the case, if this parable the master is telling us is about what has happened, about what is happening, and about what's going to happen in the kingdom, that there are good seed and there are wheat and there are tares, and both are going together. If you're Yah, and this is the case, what would you do? How would you do it? Meaning, how would you know, or what would you do to tell them apart? Because the problem is, and again, I will show more pictures when we get to our Saturday service, show you what wheat and what darnel actually looks like. It's pretty amazing. They look pretty close. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell until harvest time, and then you can tell which is which, and we'll get more into that later. But if you were Yah, now I know, Abba's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts, though we are supposed to be learning and trying to understand how Abba thinks. Now, we have the mind of Messiah, the mind of Abba's spirit inside of us. So we ought to be understanding some of these things. But let me ask you, if you were Yah, and this was the case, and you sowed a field, and both things are growing, the thing you want and the thing you don't want, that could actually hurt the thing you want, because that's what weeds do. They don't just grow; they take nutrients away from the good seed, which we already read in Matthew 23, that the Pharisees, the scribes, the priests, not only did they not go into the kingdom, but they're preventing others who should be going into the kingdom. So the weeds, those masquerading as righteousness, definitely affect those of the good seed. So what would you do if you were Yah? If you were the gardener here? Well, of course, you can see the yellow PDP there. Here's my answer, or here's what I would do. I'd mark them. I would do something to the good wheat that I could tell the difference. And not only that I could tell the difference, but that they could tell the difference and be able to identify each other by a particular mark or seal or sign. Something that would differentiate them from the weeds. That's what I would do. Now, I guess I'm just a guy, but amazingly, guess what? That's what Abba did too. That was Father's plan all along as well. He knew that there would be wheat, and he knew that there would be weeds. And he made sure to tell the difference. For the wheat to tell the difference, for him to tell the difference between his people, those that are his people, and those that are not his people. So here we go. This is not obviously the first time as the master is telling us this parable, because this is stuff that has happened in history before, It's happening when Messiah is speaking it. We notice that we see that from Matthew 23. We see that from him calling the Pharisees, the Sadducees, sons of the devil. The tares are right there. And it happens after the resurrection. And it is happening still today. So we get some historical context to see how Abba would deal with this. And here's how Father would deal with this. We know because he's already dealt with this before. This is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 9. Now, I want you to, if you've got your Bible, certainly you can go back and read chapter 8. We've done that before, just a few weeks ago, I believe. We went through chapter 8, which is a list to Ezekiel. They're in Babylon. They're being exiled. They're being exiled because they broke the Sabbath. They broke the land Sabbaths and all sorts of other things. So they're exiled to Babylon. And Abba shows Ezekiel all the abominations that are going on inside the temple, inside of his people. Of course, the worship of Tammuz, the weeping for Tammuz, the Easter morning sunrise service, the cross buns, all that stuff is going on. The idols for all the different sun, the moon, and the stars that are hidden in people's homes, that are hidden in the temple. And so that's chapter 8. This is all the abominations that are going on. In chapter 9, Abba now tells Ezekiel he's going to destroy everything. He's going to wipe it all out. He's going to destroy Jerusalem. He's going to wipe everything out. And so this is the account of what the Master says about the coming wrath upon Jerusalem. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 1. It says, "And he called out in my hearing with a loud voice." That is, Abba called out, or the angel that represented Abba called out in a loud voice, saying, "Let the punishers of the city draw near, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand. And look, 6 men." Now, it appears as men, but these are angels we're talking about. So this is an angelic judgment. This is like a bowl or a wrath, a bowl or a seal that we see later on in the book of Revelation, which we're going to get to in a second. So it says, "And look, 6 men," meaning angels, "came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces the north, each with a battle axe in his hand." So these are not angels with harps, right? These are angels for war. These are angels for wrath. And the next verse says, and I'm right here, so if you guys, I'm going to underline it there in yellow so you guys can see. It says, "And one man," or one angel, "in their midst was clothed with linen and had a writer's inkhorn at his side." So today we would say he had a pen, right? He had a pen in his hand. So these other guys got battle axes and they're ready to just go do damage. The other guy's got a pen. He's got a little calligraphy pen, ink, got to dip it in the ink and you get to write. It says, "And they came and stood beside the bronze slaughter place." So this is right in the temple. "And the glory of the Elohim of Israel went up from the cherub, where it had been, from the holy place." It lifts, Abba's presence is moving. It's leaving the temple, where it had been, to the threshold of the house. "And he called to the man clothed with linen," that's the guy with the pen in his hand, "who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. And Yah said to him, Pass on into the midst of the city, into the midst of Yerushalayim, or Yah's Shalom." If you listen to this morning's devotion, this is familiar. This is the city of peace, or supposed to be the city of the peace, but it's a city of abomination now. "And he tells him, Pass into the midst of the city, into the midst of Jerusalem, and you shall put a mark, a sign, a seal on the foreheads." Now I put the PDP version in there so we can make the connection here, because this is Matthew 13, or this is what the Messiah is talking about in history past, but also prophecy for what's coming in the future. "You shall put a mark on the foreheads of the wheat, of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it." So he's going to put a mark to identify those that are his, because judgment's about to come to everything. But so that the righteous don't suffer with the unrighteous, Abba puts a mark. So Abba can tell the difference between wheat and tares. He puts a mark. And I'm right here, guys, if you're going to follow. It says, and to the others, that is the guys with the battle axes in their hand, he said in my hearing, pass on into the city after him and strike the tares. Strike. Do not let your eye pardon nor spare. Kill to destruction the old, young men, maidens, women, maidens and children and women. But do not come near anyone upon whom is the mark, the sign, the seal. Do not come upon any of the wheat, and begin at my set apart place, that is the temple. So they began with the elders who were in front of the house. Wow. Wow. What a story. What a scary story, but a great story as well, because this is teaching us a principle of what Abba has done, what Abba did in the days of Messiah, and what's coming in the future, what we are living through right now. Before judgment comes, Abba marks his people. So he can tell the difference between the wheat and the tares, and also so we can tell the difference between what is wheat and what is tares. This same pattern, this almost verbatim story, appears in the book of Revelation, because it's not just history in Ezekiel, it's prophecy from Messiah, the book of Revelation, but it's prophecy from Matthew 13, but prophecy from the book of Revelation as well. Here it is in the book of Revelation, almost identical. This is chapter 6. We're going to start in chapter 6. We're going to get right to chapter 7 just to build up some of the thought here. Now, again, pay attention to the PDP markings here, because it'll help connect everything. Chapter 6, verse 15, this is the judgment, or judgment's about to happen. It says, and put the PDP in there, and the tares, the weeds, the kings of the earth, the great ones, the religious ones, and the rich ones, the commanders, and the mighty, and every slave and every free one, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne, that is Abba, Father, and from the wrath of the Lamb, that is obviously the Messiah, because the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? This is what we're watching, or what we just saw in Ezekiel chapter 9. Chapter 7 of Revelation continues the narrative. And it says, John says, as this is going on, he says, and after this I saw 4 messengers, angels, standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, wind being judgment, a storm, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another messenger, an angel, coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. He's got a pen in his hand. He's got an inkhorn. He's got a pen, just like the story that we just read in Ezekiel. Holding the seal, the mark, the sign of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 messengers to whom it was given to harm, PDP version, to harm the tares, the weeds. But before that can be done, it says, to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the tares, the weeds, the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed, marked, put a sign on, sealed the servants, the wheat of our Elohim upon their foreheads. Now, why upon their foreheads? Both here and, of course, in the book of Ezekiel. Obviously, it appears much earlier than the book of Ezekiel. To put a mark on their foreheads has to do with the way they think, the way they understand, the way they believe. The mark is to be on our foreheads and on our hands. It is supposed to be what we think, what we believe, what we understand, and what we do. The hand is what you work with. So a mark is put on their foreheads. This mark differentiates them, the wheat, from the tares. This is harvest. This is what Master said. Let them both grow together until the harvest. So what happens at the harvest? Before the harvest, the wheat is marked. It's marked so that we know who we are, and it's marked so that Abba knows who we are. The angels know who we are. So when the battle axe starts swinging, when all the mighty men, the weeds of the earth, start hiding in rocks, we're spared from it. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to see some crazy stuff, but we're not going to see that, or we're not going to be part of that. This is very, very important. How does Abba differentiate between wheat and tares? He marks the wheat. Okay, so let's take a look at this. If Abba is going to mark his wheat, mark his people, the real question is, or the obvious question would then be, so what's the mark? What's the mark? What's the seal? What's the sign of the wheat? This is going to become, maybe not tonight, but later on, very important in understanding another mark later on. But what is the mark, the seal, the sign of the wheat? Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Now, I know for some of you guys, it's going to be just, review. You can say, oh, gee, I know that's kind of basic information. This is more than basic information. This is paramount. Exodus 20, verse 8. This comes right out of the commandments, the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12. Very obviously the same quote. This is later on after the 40 years passed, but same quotes, the Ten Commandments. It says here to guard the Sabbath, protect the Sabbath, protect the Sabbath day, set it apart as Yah your Elohim commanded you. Exodus chapter 13, verse 9. So let's see really kind of what is entailed in that fourth commandment. Well, here's Exodus chapter 13, verse 9. This is when they get out of Egypt through the Passover, a Moedim, what will eventually become a Sabbath. It says, and it, the Passover, a feast day, shall be a sign, a mark, a seal to you on your hand, and as a reminder between your eyes. Hold on a second. How can we tell who's wheat and who's tares? The Passover is one way. The understanding of the Passover in the mind, in the heart, and in the actions. That the Torah of Yah is to be in your mouth, the instruction, for with a strong hand Yah has brought you out of Egypt. So what's a sign? Part of the mark? The Passover. But it's more than just the Passover. We're going to find out it's the feasts. It's all the Sabbaths. So don't forget, the Moedim are Sabbaths. And you shall guard this law at its appointed time. That's Moedim. It's feast day. You are to guard this law at its appointed time. Appointed time meaning, or it says appointed time from year to year, meaning you are to guard this thing according to Abba's calendar. Abba's going to set up or has already set up a calendar, a way of knowing when Passover is and all the other Moedim. And he's telling us to guard it, to protect it. It is a sign. It is a seal. Now I'm skipping some verses. I'm going down to verse 16, but you can go back and you can just read all of chapter 13 there. But here's verse 16 and look at what it says in verse 16. And it, the Passover, the Sabbaths, and you'll see in a second, it's not just the Passover, it's all of the Moedim. It says, and it, the Passover, shall be a sign on your hand and on the frontlets of your eyes. That is your head, your thinking, your understanding, and your doing. It's not enough just to have an intellectual idea that, okay, there's the Passover. It's not enough to just think that. We have to think it, understand it, and do it, practice it, because the learning comes in the practicing. So what happens if we remove the Passover and celebrate something else and say something else is it? Then you know what you don't have? You don't have the mark. you don't have the thing that differentiates you from tares. For by strength of hand he brought us out of Egypt. Here's Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. And as you speak to the children of Israel, saying, my Sabbaths. So it's same chapter, same book. It's not just the Passover, it's all the Sabbaths. And as you speak to the children of Israel, saying, my Sabbaths, my feast days, which are part of Abba's calendar, you are to guard by all means. Hold on a second. Why should we guard these things? Why do they need to be guarded? Because these are the things that tell us the difference between wheat and tares. And guys, on that day, you're going to want to make sure you're marked. Listen to what it says. I'm right here, guys. So you can see I'm not adding anything to this. I'm telling you exactly what it says. For the Sabbaths, for it is a sign, it is a seal, it is a mark between me and you throughout your generations, to know that I, Yah, am setting you apart. I am marking you. I am sealing you. I am setting apart the wheat. Setting apart the wheat from what? From the tares. Skipping down to verse 16. And the children of Israel shall guard, protect, keep, remember the Sabbaths, to perform the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign, it is a seal, it is a mark forever. For in 6 days Yah made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. So, when Abba rests on the seventh day, well, I think I have that verse in there in just a minute or so. But did Abba have to rest on the seventh day? I mean, think about it. When we read that 6 days Abba worked, the whole creation story, and on the seventh he rested. Are you telling me Abba was tired? The father got tired and decided, listen, I need a break. No, of course not. He neither slumbers and he neither sleeps. He did it as a pattern. He did it as a pattern to show us this concept, this idea that this whole thing rests on the seventh day. Here is Exodus. We just read this. Let me get out of here a second. So if you're Abba, as I just said, we just kind of went through. If you're Abba and you're trying to think like Abba, what's one way of knowing the difference between wheat and tares? Marking them, right? All right, so let's jump the other way. What if you're the dragon? Let's think like the dragon for a second. So if I'm the dragon and I know that there is a mark that Abba has put on his people, I know that there is something that he has given to them that separates them, that separates the wheat, his seed, from my seed. What is the one thing, since this is a war, this is a battle, it's a battle about the people here on the earth, but this is a battle. What's the one thing that I should attack? What's the one thing that I should obscure? What's the one thing I should try to remove? What's the one thing I should try to water down if I want to bring as many wheat with my children to destruction? Well, the answer is kind of obvious. You attack the mark. You attack the calendar. You attack the feasts. You attack the Sabbaths. You use religion to do it. You use servants masquerading as men of righteousness when actually they serve the angel that appears as light, the dragon. Here's Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. Again, this is not new. This didn't just start happening at the time of Messiah. The story Messiah is telling us goes all the way back from the creation to where Messiah is and then future to our day. Here's Exodus chapter 20, verse 11, another verse we've talked about before, so it should be familiar to you. Listen to the promise. And honestly, if you just read through, Isaiah, Jeremiah, all the prophets, Ezekiel, Daniel, read through them, and you will find that there is almost a single theme throughout all of them. Abba's people kept messing up the Sabbaths. They kept messing up the Moedim. Here's Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. And I gave them my laws, and I showed them my right rulings, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And I also gave them my Sabbaths, my Moedim. Moedim is just the Hebrew word for feasts, for the appointed times. And I gave them my Sabbaths. Here it is. I gave them my Sabbaths. Why? Here it is, guys. Everything we just read in, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this as Exodus. It's not Exodus, it's Ezekiel. Just want to make sure I correct that so you guys can see. It's Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 11. I don't know why I put Exodus there, typo on my part. But it's Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 11. I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign, a mark, a seal between them and me, to know that I am Yah who sets them, the wheat, PDP version, apart from the tares. This is Matthew 13. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my laws. They have rejected my right rulings, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And here it is, guys. And they greatly profane my Sabbaths, which are explained to us in Abba's calendar. So the enemy, we know what the enemy's been doing. We know what the history of the enemy is. We know this is how he's worked. We know this is the stumbling block to the people of Abba throughout all of time. And it is still the stumbling block today. Plan hasn't changed. It's gotten much, much bigger, but it hasn't changed. All right. So we thought of this from Abba's perspective. What do you do to mark your people, your wheat? Well, to identify them, you mark them. All right, Satan's perspective. What do I do if Abba's trying to mark them? I attack the mark. Remove the mark, obscure the mark, water down the mark, change the mark, do whatever I can to try to change their concept, their understanding of this thing that is supposed to be a sign, a seal, that identifies them at the harvest from between destruction and salvation. Okay, let's go back to thinking about Abba then. So if you're Abba and you know that you're going to mark your people, you know what the story is going to be, you know how this thing's going to play out. You know when you started scattering seed on the field in the world, you knew this was the story that was going to be told. It's your story. This is your story that's being told. So you mark your wheat. You know that Satan's going to come here and he's going to attack it. So how do you protect your wheat? How do you make sure that you can tell the difference and that those that really are yours can tell the difference and not succumb to the watered down, to the removal, to the obscurity, to the religion surrounding the mark, surrounding the feasts? And I mean, just think about modern religion today. It's all a rejection of the feasts. It's happening today. So if you're Abba, what do you do? How can you set this? Because if you're telling your people, this is a sign between me and you forever. This is a mark to separate you forever. What can you do to make sure that no matter how much the enemy waters down, obscures, tries to remove, change, obfuscates, whatever words you want to use, no matter what he attempts to do, how do you make sure your people know the truth? Well, you make the calendar untouchable, unchangeable. How do you do that? Well, if you're Abba and you are like, the one who creates everything, you put your calendar in the stars, in the sun, and in the moon. Because the enemy can't touch that. It's set in motion. It obeys. Now, he can obfuscate it. He can make all sorts of people worship the things in the heavens, but the story it tells, as Psalm 19 tells us, night and day utters speech to us. That story, the calendar in the heavens, doesn't change. The sun will always do what the sun does and go through the path it always does. The moon will do what it always does and go through the path that it always does. The stars will do what they were supposed to do. Here it is, Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. So Abba, right in the beginning, puts in motion something that is unchangeable until there's a new heaven and new earth. Why? So that his people can always look to it to tell who they are. Here's Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate day from night, and let them be for signs. Signs that mark, that seal, that identify the wheat. For signs and appointed time. The word there for appointed times is moedim. So what do the lights in the heavens tell us? It tells us when the appointed times are. The feasts, the Sabbaths, meaning the seventh day after the 6 days of work, and the 7 feasts throughout the year. What tells us that? The lights that Abba put in the heavens. And they are for days and years according to, here's the PDP version, according to Abba's reckoning of time. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light, to speak, right? Psalms 19, they speak, to speak on the earth. So the sun, the moon, and the stars speak to us as a calendar on the earth. We're supposed to look at them and understand what time it is, what day it is, what month it is, what day it is, what appointed time is coming. Now, I know it seems odd and weird to us because it's been obfuscated. It's been watered down. It's been removed because that's what the enemy did. It says, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And I'm right here, guys. Let me erase this so you guys can see. I'll put it in orange. It says, and it came to be so. So Abba did it. Now pay attention to the PDP here. And Elohim made 2 great lights. To do what? To be for signs that mark, seal, and identify the wheat, for appointed times, moedim feasts, and for days and for years. So what did Abba do? He made 2 great lights. The greater light, the sun, to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. Well, the lesser light is the moon, and the stars are for signs. Now we'll get into more of the actual mechanics of all of this later on. I just want us to understand the story first so that when we get into the mechanics, it makes sense. It makes sense to the entire volume of the book. So it's not like I'm saying, okay, this is what we do. This is what we're going to believe. This is why we do it. This is the story that is unfolded, and we can check it in history and look at it in history. So it says, verse 17, and Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens to speak, to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night. And here it is. Now I put the PDP version. So what is the sun, the moon, and the stars for? And to separate the wheat, the light, from the tares, the weeds, the darkness. Let that sink in a second. Wait a minute. You're telling me the parable of Matthew 13 is reaching all the way back to Genesis chapter 1? Yes. Yes. And obviously Messiah knew that. Yes, absolutely. Yay and amen. And to separate the wheat, the light, from the tares, the weeds, the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. Why is it good? It's unchangeable. No matter what the serpent does, what lie he tells, what he changes, what he waters down, he cannot change the path of the sun. He cannot change the path of the moon. He cannot change the path of the stars. It is unchangeable. Not one jot, not one tittle will pass away till all of heaven and earth pass away. And it's not passing away until there's a new heaven and earth. It's unchangeable. Abba's witness to us, and the thing that separates us is up there. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the fourth day. Okay, so I know a little bit different reading than because we've read those verses before, but this is really important to the story. So if you're Abba, you mark your children, you mark the wheat. And we now know what the mark is. Well, if you're Satan, if you're the devil, you attack the mark, as he has always done before. But what he can attack, what he cannot change, is the sun and the moon and the stars. What he has done is he's gotten us to forget about them. He's got us to stop looking at them. He's got us to change Abba's calendar. Here is verse I referred to before, Genesis chapter 1. So what, again, does Abba need rest? Of course not. But Abba leads us by example to show us the importance of this 7 days. Genesis chapter 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all in their array. And the seventh day, and the seventh day Elohim completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made. I think it's actually Genesis chapter 2. I know I put chapter 1 there, but just guys can check that for yourselves. So why does Elohim rest? It's as an example. Again, Abba was not tired. He didn't need the rest. He chose to rest to be an example for us. And again, just go right through the scripture. How many times do we see the number 7? And just over and over and over and over, from the feast days to the week to just everything, to all of Revelation. 7 pops up again. Why? Because it is part of the sign. It's the thing to direct us. Here's Luke chapter 6, verse 5. So here's what we wind up getting later on. Well, Messiah changed that. It's not about the Sabbath anymore. It's a new day. No, that's not what it says. It doesn't say that anywhere, as a matter of fact. You know who does say that? People masquerading as servants of righteousness. They have said that. But Abba's word doesn't say that. Luke chapter 6, verse 5. This is the master, and he said to them, the son of Adam himself is the master of the Sabbath. And it also came to be on another Sabbath. So he's doing things on the Sabbath that the religious people are furious with. But he is the master of the Sabbath. And he entered into the congregation and taught. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and the Pharisees were watching him closely, whether he would heal on the Sabbath, to find an accusation against him. They're looking for something to use against him that he does on the Sabbath. So did the master here not keep Sabbath? Did the master not understand calendar? No, he actually tells us he is the master of the Sabbath. Again, in Matthew chapter 12, same instance, but just another rendering of it. Verse 5, it says, or did you not read in the Torah that on the Sabbath the priest in the set-apart place profane the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the set-apart place. He's talking about himself. He's saying there's one greater than the temple. Messiah is greater than the temple. The temple that stood in Jerusalem, Messiah is greater than it. And if you had known what this means, I desire compassion and not offering. The master's healing on the Sabbath. He's saying, I want compassion on the Sabbath, not your religious offerings, not your recollection of what should and shouldn't be done, which is not according to Moses to begin with. I want compassion, love, mercy, goodness, peace, joy, fruit. I want that on the Sabbath. And obviously the master is the master of it, or Messiah is the master of it. But what he doesn't want religious offering. And that's what they were trying to give him. But it's their own religion. These are servants of the angel of light masquerading as servants of righteousness, as we've already established in the beginning of this study. I desire compassion and not offering. You would not have condemned the blameless. And again, here he says it. For the son of Adam is master of the Sabbath. It's not a different Sabbath later on. Well, we'll get into that. Not today. We'll get into it later on. It's not a different Sabbath. It's not a different day. It's not a different calendar. It's the same one. I know people say, well, maybe he wasn't really keeping the calendar that day. If Messiah and the disciples, and I'll be able to prove it to you down the road, but if in fact Messiah and the disciples did not keep the same calendar that Abba established in the sun, the moon, and the stars, then Abba's not an Abba. Then Abba's not Father. Then Abba's not Creator. Then Abba's not God. And you're telling me that the God who created life itself out of nothing, who holds everything in the palm of his hand, that has created this entire story, that has made us living beings, that has given us the compassion, the love, the wisdom, the intellect to create the things that we create, the one who keeps the stars and the sun and the moon in its place, that created all it, that he can't have his people identified by the calendar he set up by the time the Messiah comes, that they messed that up. And I'm sorry, if you believe that we don't believe in the same God. Because my God does not change. He is the Father of lights, the sun, the moon, and the stars. And with him, there is no changing. That thing he set up is consistent all the way through. And we'll find out more about that as we move on. So, and we'll find out that you're going to see later on, they were keeping the correct calendar. I know there's a whole bunch of different calendars that were going on. I know Israel was messing with all sorts of different things. That's been the story the whole time. And yet Abba has still kept his people. Okay, so let's get into this. So let's go back to thinking like the angel of light again. All right, so now we've been thinking about, so if you're the angel of light, all right, you're the angel of light, and obviously you now know what the sign is. You know what the Sabbaths mean. You know that they're the identifying mark. So you're going to attack the Sabbaths. Here's Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. Listen to some of the PDP to help it make sense to you. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. These are the beasts that come from the sea. This is Babylon, Persia, Medo, all of those nations. I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb. It was religious. It masqueraded as a servant of righteousness, as a believer in Messiah. No different than John tells us in 1 John. They were with us. They were of us. And they left. They were anti-Messiah. They were servants, or they appeared to be servants of righteousness, but they weren't. And we know this. Why? Because though he looks like a lamb, or this, even though it's a he, it's talking about a nation, a people. It looked like a lamb, but it spoke like the dragon. All right, so we put ourselves in the dragon's shoes. What does the dragon say? Everything he can against the Sabbath, against the feasts, against the Torah, against the seal, against the mark, and against the calendar, because all of it depends on the calendar, on the sun, the moon, and the stars. That's the speak that's going to come out of this particular servant, that's this masquerading servant of righteousness. And he exercises all of the authority of the first beast. Well, the first beast in this particular instance is Babylon. Babylon. We'll get more into that. A lot more information to give you. Just don't have time to do it tonight. In his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, Mystery Babylon, Tammuz, whose deadly wound was healed. Daniel chapter 7 confirms, and actually I think Revelation confirms Daniel chapter 7, that this is what the dragon will do. This is, again, we're putting ourselves in his mind. If this is the most important thing that seals and separates Abba's people from everybody else, that's what you attack. That's what you get rid of. And we were warned that this would happen. We looked at this last week. Let's look at it again. Daniel chapter 7, verse 21. He's talking about Rome. And I was looking at this horn. Rome was fighting against the set-apart ones, the believers, Jews at this particular time, but the Netzarim and Gentiles mixed in. Was fighting at the set-apart ones. We're talking about first century now. I was looking at this horn, and it was fighting against the set-apart ones and was prevailing against them. Hold on a second. You're telling me Rome prevailed against the Jews, against the Netzarim? Yes. Yes, that's what this is telling us. until the Ancient of Days came, and right ruling, a seal, a mark, a sign, was restored, given to the set-apart ones of the Most High. And the time came that the set-apart ones took possession of the kingdom. That's the whole story. He's just giving us the whole story, beginning to front. This beast comes. This beast fights against the set-apart ones. This beast overcomes them. So how would the beast overcome it? Well, we just looked at it in the verses above. He looks like a lamb. It's religious, but speaks like the dragon, against the Sabbath, against the feast, against the Torah, against the seal, against the mark, against the calendar, and overcomes the saints, just like the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the priests, who were not going into the kingdom of God, but instead stopped others from going in as well. That's been the story for almost 2,000 years. Until Abba, we are told, returns right ruling. The sign, the seal, the mark. Judgment's coming. And what is the pattern? Before judgment, seal the believers. Seal the wheat. It was restored and given to the set-apart ones. And again, then at the end of it, they take the kingdom. Here we are, verse 23. This is what he said. The fourth, so now he's going to explain more of this. The verses we just read is an overall statement. It's a historical statement from the beginning of the time of Rome, first century, all the way to the end when the Ancient of Days comes, when Messiah comes representing Father. Verse 23, this is what he said. The fourth beast is the fourth reign on the earth, Rome, which is different from all other kingdoms, and it devours all of the earth, tramples it down, and crushes it. Rome is still here today, guys. You're living in it. And the 10 horns are 10 kings from his reign, 10 different emperors that conquered the Jewish people and also the Netzarim. They shall arise. And another hears the lamb, or looks like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. Here's the servant masquerading as a servant of righteousness. They shall rise, and another lamb dragon masquerading shall arise after them. Constantine. Roman Christianity takes over the way. Shall arise after them. And it is different from the first ones. And it humbles 3 kings, and it speaks words against the Most High. We're talking about Constantine. And it wears out the set-apart ones of the Most High. Takes it over. And what does Rome do? What does Constantine do? Well, we call it the Nicene Council, or the Council of Milan, First Council of Milan, the Council of Nicaea. What's one of the first things that get done by Rome as it usurps the people of the way? Changes everything. Changes the Torah, gets a whole bunch of pagan priests together that have mixed all sorts of things into the Word of God. They didn't invite any rabbis, any people that were Netzarim to this council, got them all in there and came up with doctrine that is in opposition to everything that the Torah says, including the calendar. And what do they do at this council? They change the Sabbath. They make it the venerable day of the sun. They do exactly what we thought in figuring, wargaming this thing out, we would do if we were the dragon. And it wears out the set-apart ones of the Most High, and it intends to change, and does. Not immediate, not like a day after. This takes time, and we're still in the process of it changing the whole world. And it intends to change appointed times. Well, where are the appointed times? In Abba's calendar, which are where? Sun, moon, and stars. How many of us look at the sun, the moon, and the stars to figure out what day it is, to figure out when the appointed times are? None of us do. We've all been overcome. But Abba is today restoring right ruling, restoring to us the set-apart ones, the seal, the mark, the thing that should identify us differently from the wheat before harvest. What verse was I in? He intends to change the calendar, the appointed times, and the Torah, the law. Well, that's pretty much what Roman Christianity did. Changed it all. Told us it's against us. Told us it's a burden. Told us you don't have to do it. And they are given into its hand for a time, times, and half a time. Is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. That's how this thing begins. So, the angel of light creates religion. He's religious. Doesn't even mind if we do some things. But what he does not want us to do is to be separated, is to be marked on our foreheads or on our hands. And yet the difference between those who will receive judgment and those who won't is, in fact, by all the scriptures we already read, those who are separated, that can tell who is the wheat and who are the tares. This is pretty important stuff. This is really, really important stuff. Now, you could, I know, and our understanding of this is growing. My understanding of this is growing. Simply put, and I think it's a mistake to just think about this simply. But simply put, we could say, okay, well, Constantine comes along and he changed it from whatever the Sabbath was to Sunday, the venerable day of the sun. And of course, we all have heard, and we've talked about before, what most of us have learned in whatever religious background we've come from, that's a new Sabbath. That Messiah started a new Sabbath. That the resurrection happened on a Sunday. So then, therefore, Sunday is the new day. We're going to go all through that. We're going to look through history, and we're going to see that just is not the case. It's not even close to being the case. But another message for another time. But it's not that simple. I mean, it is that simple, but it's not that simple. I mean, if that's all the enemy had to do, so then how do you fix it? Well, you don't do Sunday, right? And which is kind of where we've done as we moved on in our understanding. But it's more intricate than that. We're not talking about a dumb angel of light. He's a smart angel of light. And the deception is not just, oh, wow, I'm kind of hiding the day, but it's still there. No, it's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than most of us have thought. We're going to get into some really tricky territory. It's going to make some of us uncomfortable. It's made me uncomfortable. But we got to go through it and at least weigh it out and test it, as I am doing, to try to understand it. Because this is important. We're talking about the difference between the sealed, between the marked, and those that are not. Before the angels with hatchets start coming and all that stuff happens, before the angels that hold back the four winds of the earth start letting it go. And I think it looks like it's starting to break through the cracks already. So what has the enemy done? Like I said, it's not as simple as we've made it out to be. And I know I'm quoting Trump here, but so if you're in a war and you're the enemy, and you know what the thing is you got to fight against, what do you put out there? We would say propaganda. Of course, Trump would say fake news. Well, it's propaganda no matter how you cut it. But it's not, according to Daniel, propaganda just pointed at the Gentiles. Daniel's not talking about Gentiles and at the end. He's talking about Jew and Gentile will have the appointed times changed. Jew and Gentile, believers, the Jew and the foreigner or the stranger that's with them will have the Torah taken away from them. They both will be overcome. So it's not as easy, or we're going to find out it's not as simple as just saying, well, they just changed, they just made it 24 hours later. It's not that simple. It's much more intricate than that. When we say propaganda, here's just a couple of synonyms. I typed in, synonyms for propaganda. Disinformation. Oh boy, we hear a lot about that today, right? Anything that whatever group in power doesn't want people to know, they call it disinformation. They call it conspiracy theories, and then later on they turn out to be true. Disinformation, hype, indoctrination, publicity. You advertise a lot. You keep telling people the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for like 1,800 years. That's good publicity or good advertising. It's also called brainwashing. Doctrine. It's called, I know, this hurts. It's called, a synonym for propaganda is evangelism, implantation, inculcation, news speak, promotion, promulgation, Proselytism. You go out to try to proselytize one and you make him twice as much the son of Gehenna as yourselves. That's what the master said about that religion. Can you imagine today? Publication. These are just synonyms for what the enemy would do, for what fake news and propaganda. And I want you to realize it does not say in Daniel that he will take it away from the Gentiles, that the Gentiles will not know. He does it to the set apart ones. And from Daniel's perspective, the set apart ones are the Jewish people. They are the ones that will have this robbed from them. And if they've got it robbed from them, we've all got it robbed from us. We are the beneficiaries of that understanding. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 is exactly what fake news, propaganda, disinformation, hype, doctrine, evangelism, promotion, proselytism, publication will seek to obscure, to remove, to water down, to take away. Here's what the enemy will do. The angel of light and those that masquerade as servants of righteousness when they are really servants of the angel of light, here's what they will try to take away and have taken away until recently. Genesis 1:14. And Elohim said, let lights, the sun, the moon, and the stars, come into the expanse of the heavens to separate the wheat, day, from the tares, night, and let them be for signs, marks, seals that identify the wheat, and the appointed time, the Moedim, the feasts, the Sabbaths, and for days and years, according to Abba's reckoning of time. That's what the enemy does not want us to understand. That's what he does not want us to know. That's what he does not want us to seek. That's what he does not want us to understand. And just think about it, just across the board, across all of the religious things that you and I could think of. Which group is looking at these things and understanding it in the context of Moses? And it's not just Moses, because there's all sorts of concealment going on here. There's all sorts of censoring. We'll talk about that next week. The censoring that Satan. You think that Twitter's the first one to censor, or that YouTube's the first one to censor, or that the CIA working with the YouTube is the first one to censor people? That you think that Trump was the first one to censor? You think that censorship just started? It's been going on for a long time, and the chief of censorship is the enemy himself. What things are we not supposed to look at? Are we not supposed to read? Well, basically what's been censored to us is called the Apocrypha. Some of the books that actually explain how to use the sun, the moon, and the stars. Moses, it's been taken away. It's not for us. It's for another people. It's been censored. And we took it hook, line, and sinker because we didn't know any better. But every time you start praying, give me eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that's willing to obey, Abba answers, and he gives you more and more and more until your cup runneth over. And so we're going to try to understand what this means. Again, I think we need to understand the story to understand and how it's played out in history. We'll get into the historical part next week a little bit, but how it's played out in history, because we're living it. We are living in it, and we are still in it. Even today, right now, we are still in it. But we're coming out of it. We are walking out of darkness into light. We are the wheat. And let's be marked as so in our foreheads and on our hands. All right. Well, that's all I got time for today, guys. Again, title and topic of today is the angel of light. The angel of light. Don't forget to download the notes, guys. I hope that you enjoyed that study. Check out, if you haven't checked out the previous ones, check out the other ones, because they all sort of, line up together. We build the foundation, and each week I'm just trying to make my case, just sort of like an attorney. I'm just trying to make the case week after week after week. So it all sort of adds up. So it's really important that you listen to the whole thing. Write down your notes, write down your questions. We're going to have a time eventually in a couple of weeks or so. We'll get together on a Shabbat, and we'll really try to iron this out, because I can't really just do it on a regular message. We got to sit down. We got to really take a look at this and go through this as closely and carefully as we can to make the case. But we're going to do it because I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth. No matter what it means, I want to know the truth. I want to take the warning of Revelation 18 seriously, to come out of Mystery Babylon. so that we do not get the judgment that's coming to her. How do we come out? He restores right ruling to us. And he started doing that already. And we're walking the path. But at some point, he's going to restore the feast days to us, restore our understanding of it in our minds and in our actions. Guys, have a wonderful night out there tonight. Guys, thank you again so much for hanging out. Do not forget to subscribe and to hit that bell so that you're notified. And give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed that message. Really would appreciate that, guys. Have a wonderful evening, guys. We'll see you tomorrow morning for Morning Manna and, of course, Friday for Hidden Manna. Shalom, everybody.